Hi, and welcome to week 25. Now, some of you may realize that this is like 2 weeks late, and there are a couple different reasons for that. This has been a rough 2 weeks for me to get any time to actually sit and do a video of any kind. I had trouble doing other things I've wanted to do as well. I have, however, been doing the reading, and I did finish the book, Lady Joker Volume 2, that is for this week. It is a long book. This is, I think, just about on par, maybe like 25 pages longer than the first half. But essentially, it's a slightly over 1,000 page novel if you put them together as one. And that's one thing about the publishing history of this. I'm not sure if it was published as one or published as two. I did look a little bit into the history. I did look for other reviews and things like that. And despite the blurbs, claiming all kinds of, great book and those kinds of things, at least the online stuff, the people who specialize in reading modern Japanese literature, they don't mention it. So I couldn't tell you what that means because modern Japanese literature is definitely one of many, many, many glaring blind spots in my overall knowledge of world literature. Uh, I do know a couple of names, such as Yukio Mishima, and I have read some other modern Japanese novels, but I'm certainly not up to date. I mean, Mishima is, 60s and 70s, and that's like, you know, 50 years ago. That's hardly even modern anymore. And so that's where my knowledge ends. What knowledge I've got in the first place, which isn't great to begin with. So I'm certainly no expert in this field. So as you might recall, this whole story revolves around what is ultimately a true story about a group of criminals who tamper with some products of a major Japanese corporation, seemingly for no purpose. And in real life, nobody knows what really took place. There are some suspects and some suspicions, but there was never any arrests, there were never any convictions, there was never any public disclosure of what actually happened. And this allows uh, Kaoru Takamura, Kaoru Takamura, to tell a story of corporate finance and corruption and discrimination and sort of a bit of an underbelly of modern Japanese culture. In real life, I don't know that anyone actually died. In here, three people do. None of them, well, not three, actually, about six altogether. Um, I was thinking specifically of the people who were actually, apparently, straightforwardly killed. Um, there are only three that I can think of at the moment, but there were several others that had a death in one way or another. In fact, including sort of attending random funerals and other things, death kind of hovers over this novel in a way that you wouldn't necessarily expect, because at first it's very much not about that. There's also perhaps something going on with disability and how disability is treated in Japan. I'm not really sure. There's potentially some family stuff going on with the way, by the end, a sort of new family is created. There's definitely some issues dealing with morality and modern Japanese business ethics and, sort of traditional Japanese morality and that sort of thing as well. So, what happens here is in the first half of the novel, a gentleman who is the CEO of a large beer company is kidnapped. And he is told that he needs to pay 2 billion yen to these people who have kidnapped him, or they will hold his beer hostage, and they will also, it's implied, reveal a deep family secret that his brother-in-law, I think it is brother-in-law, his brother-in-law's daughter rejected a suitor because he was baraku, which is um, a group of people in Japan who used to be tanners and worked with the dead and that kind of thing. And this was seen as dirty and disrespectful by both Confucian and Shinto and historical Japanese points of view, and so they were discriminated against. And this discrimination has been made illegal and is very complicated. If you look into the Barakum and what their current status is in Japan, it's very convoluted in terms of how it works. They're not supposed to be discriminated against, but the discrimination is deep in the culture, and in a culture that looks into someone's background for a marriage or for a job, it's become a point of contention whether or not looking back into someone's past like this is inherently a racist act, basically. And so, in any case, the discrimination is still real and affects several million people in Japan, but it's also apparently better than it has been. So perhaps strides are being made. Um, I'm not sure. I ran into a Japanese individual not too long ago, and I asked them about it, and they professed absolute ignorance about this idea. So possibly it's not even well known in Japan, which is one of the things I have heard. Now, in order to understand how Takamura is using this idea, I had to look it up a bit, and I also looked up some criticisms of the novel if I could find some. And apparently online, it's not, it's not been reviewed very much. That doesn't mean it's not been reviewed in print. I mean, the blurbs in the back suggest it certainly has been, but I didn't encounter any online stuff, so I don't know. Um, in any case, this CEO is threatened this way, and he is able to tell the police um, that these people want 300 million yen, which is what he's told to tell them, when they really want 2 billion, and they want it, you know, uh, to a secret channel because of these things. And he doesn't tell the police either of these things. Now, so what happens is they let him go after like 2 or 3 days, and the police are kind of baffled as to why this company is seeking a reward or a extortion when they're extorting nothing. They've returned the guy, they've kidnapped the guy and returned him. So what hold do they have over this major beer company? Well, the hold they have is a psychological one because of this Baraku business. The beer thing matters, but it's implied very heavily that the CEO of this company and the beer company itself would react differently if that were the sole problem. So the first book uh, deals with everything up to the point where um, the kidnappers start making their demands really known, and how that all falls out. And the first half of the first book you get mostly from the kidnapper's point of views, and the second half you get from that CEO's point of view and from the police and the journalists who are following the story and trying to catch these people. At some point, these people call themselves Lady Joker, hence the name, and that refers to the disabled daughter of one of the people in this group who they all call Lady. And she is a paraplegic. She is confined to a chair. the degree of her intelligence is open to question, although she does seem to recognize the horse races that they go to. Um, and she does seem to, you know, understand and relate to questions, but she's unable to feed herself. She does not speak well. She cannot toilet on her own. She basically needs 24/7 intense care. And her father, who takes her to these horse races because she enjoys the horse races, which is where these guys meet, eventually becomes very dissatisfied with his life because he's got either a sick wife or I'm not sure exactly what's wrong with her. Um, and of course, the disabled daughter that's requiring his constant attention while he's at these horse races. And he's just very dissatisfied with his life. And that becomes a theme in his arc in the story. But in any case, this book, the second one, deals with after the demands start being made, the bad guys lead the police on a couple of, Keystone Cop level wild goose chases, purporting to set up money drops where they're going to pick up the 300 million yen. And of course, they don't have any intention of ever picking that up because they're making a backroom deal. And the police are kind of aware of this backroom deal, but they don't have any information about it exactly because of the way things are playing out and because of, their investigation is stymied by the corporation not sharing that information with them. In any case, things progress and the payout is made. The $2 billion gets safely to the bad guys, and the police kind of sort of know two of the bad guys, and they kind of are really suspicious of a third, and they put tails on them. But these bad guys are aware enough of what they're doing to avoid getting caught doing anything incriminating. And so even though they're followed, one of them's a cop, the other one is a relative of the Baraku situation that happened in the past. Um, because of that, they can't find a connection between these people, and they can't prove connections between these people. They can't bring them in for questioning. They can't really accuse them of anything. They've got absolutely no evidence to go after them, except a very strong, deep suspicion. So that's where that's where we are with that. So what the second book deals with is the police and the generalistic efforts slowly fading and falling apart as the crime gets further into the past. Now, the people who did Lady Joker had no interest in doing this to any other corporation, but one of the people in Lady Joker is connected to the underground, and the actual underground, the actual Yakuza and whatnot in Japan, went in on the action here. And so they extend this to another beer company, and they tamper with products and they put cyanide in beer, things like this. Nobody dies from the cyanide, but it's a scare tactic to extort this other company. And what they're really doing is they're not really that interested in extorting money. What they're interested in doing is manipulating the stock prices so that they can use this group of um, corporations that they have to trade stock, obviously, when the stock goes down because of all of this contamination and whatever, these people buy the stock. And when that all ends, the stock goes up, they sell high. And so it's an attempt to manipulate the market, apparently. A lot of that stuff is beyond my ken as far as understanding economics, which I don't. I just know that that's what's going on. And anyway, so like I said, some people die, and these are journalists. Um, Journalists who are looking into these corporations. These are the ones who end up, well, they disappear. We don't really know for certain what happens to them because their bodies are never found, and any kind of accusation is of who did it and why they did it is a little bit left it's up in the air. But we kind of know at the same time, just like the police kind of know. But at the same time that we know, we don't actually have the evidence. And so two of the journalists die, and then the guy who was kidnapped, yeah, he gets shot. Now, why does he get shot? I'm not even sure. He just does. Uh, Partially because his company, at the same time they're dealing with this issue, they've been extorted by business interests as well, related to the Yakuza, related to this underground. And he and one of his underlings are basically, I guess, in an American point of view, sort of going state's evidence against some of these criminals, and so he's shot. So, you know, eh, it's a good book. It's a complicated book. The plot is very convoluted. There are a lot of characters. The psychological studies are very, very interesting. I found that the perspective of a guy named Godo, Godo, very, very interesting. Um, some of the names I found confusing. There's a character named Kudo, I think, and another one named like Kona or something like that, or Kano or something. And, just the similarity in the names, the unfamiliarity with a lot of the Japanese words that are used for things like, their group of journalists and that sort of thing. Yeah, it's a little confusing. A better background in Japanese culture would have definitely been helpful. I would imagine that even the confusing names are not nearly as confusing in Japanese, where they would have been represented by different characters and different kanji and that sort of thing. So it would have been very clear that this was the guy who's got this symbol, this guy's got that symbol, etc. Where in English they just represented as a K, and it gets confusing. There is a helpful um, list of people in the beginning, you know, but you know how it is. You don't want to stop constantly be flipping back to see who in the world you're reading about. You just want to keep reading. So, although I did look at it, I didn't exactly spend a lot of time with it. So, but it's a good book. I'd recommend it. It's a long read, and in terms of pacing, perhaps if what you're looking for is a thriller, it's a little slow. But if you're looking for that deep psychological angle, and if you're looking for a real sort of indictment of, capitalistic enterprises and how, at least a theory of how business works, yeah, give it a shot. Good book. Recommend.